Welcome to the Buy Box Bandits podcast.
What's up, everyone? Welcome back to the Buy Box Bandits podcast. Today, we are joined by our super special guest, Mr. Ryan Yaple, a Michigan native who sells over 8 figures a year with Wholesale. Also does some stuff with our friend Chris Potter on the accounting tax side of things. So we got a lot of e-commerce experience here, I believe over a decade right here. But let's start at the beginning, man. What made you get into selling stuff online? Then we're going to talk through your whole story and then some advanced stuff that can help fast track the audience as well.
Yeah, so thanks for having me on, guys. I got started selling online 10 years ago. Really what I was doing at the time, I was working for Radio Shack, if you remember that store, not when it's owned by Ty Lopez now, actually, it was a new store. So I worked like actual retail jobs. So I worked for them while I was in college for about 4 years. One day we were just putting out clearance stickers on different products that they had out. I started selling radar detectors of all things. You know, if the radar detector went from $90 down to 30, somebody's going to buy it for more. You just got to find them. Started selling on eBay, did that for probably about 6 months. Realized one day I was going through Reddit of all places, and Ryan Graham popped up. He used to sell a ton of stuff, probably from about 2012 to 2019, 2020. He still sells a little bit, but not as much anymore. I realized that Amazon was a great place to be. Sent our first shipment in about September of 2014. I've been selling pretty much 99% on Amazon since then. It's been a fun 9 years. It's been a journey.
A different 9 years. All right. So, I mean, you started back when so many tools didn't exist, so many different pieces of the community didn't exist, right? So to kind of kick us off,
I think the only thing that really exists as a tool back then, like in 2014, was Keepa. Camel was a thing. That's completely dead now. Yeah. I think Jungle Scout was around for a little. It might have been 14 or 15 that Jungle Scout came out. Helium 10 was right around that time. But like a lot of these things, you know, everybody sort of takes them for granted now. They've been around for 5, 8, 10 years. A lot of that stuff was just developing back then. Man, I remember like Casey Goss, that whole thing with his software with viral launch, that was huge back then. A lot of people have come and gone over this last 9 years. It's just insane.
So to give the viewers some perspective and to kind of show them how spoiled we are now, what was it like back then when you were getting going with your product research, your sourcing? How did you analyze products, make those decisions, etc.?
So like a lot of people now have at least been into tactical arbitrage over the last year or so. There was tactical arbitrage probably in like 15-ish. For a lot of the stuff, you had to actually go out to listings and just look at Keepa graphs. Either go to Keepa and look at the graph itself, or there might have been a Chrome extension. It's hard to think back that far.
Right.
A lot of stuff you were just going off of sales rank charts, just like those exist today. Those existed back then. And really, you just had to know a lot more about what you were selling. Kind of the like twisted part of it was you could basically put anything on Amazon and sell it. I mean, you could put a box cutter on there. You could put glue. There was a lot less competition. So it was a great opportunity to test things, but it also was very hard to tell how much of something was selling at any given time.
Sure. And then can you walk us through kind of the years and the revenue ranges, like specifically in terms of like the inflection points when you really realized it was possible and you realized you wouldn't have to have a job again? Okay, now I can build well with this. Talk us through that.
So like 2014, I think we did like somewhere between like $100,000 and $200,000 by the end of the year. That was from like September to the end of December, right? 2015, we did about $400,000. I signed like my first lease for a warehouse. My landlord at the time, I just got rid of him about 4 or 5 months ago. He liked our story. He liked, you know, how we were able to find opportunities in the market. And, you know, he was big into it. He's a numbers guy. So that was about $480,000. 2016, I think we hit $1 million because I saw a screenshot the other day I had in my phone, you know, with the time hop like sort of thing. I'm like, oh, that's something. 2017, it was the last year I worked for a corporate job. And I realized when I could basically make about 6 times my salary hourly, just doing Amazon. And that was probably the low end. That was like probably March
Yeah.
That's
I'm
a
like,
pretty good indication that you should maybe get out of
yeah,
there.
yeah. It's just it wasn't a good. It was a good job, but it just wasn't where you could maximize your money.
Yeah, and also too, the nice thing about being good at selling on Amazon is if you have a great year at at least most, right? Most jobs, all right, boom, you made $160, right? Congrats. Next year you make 165. Now, if you can do that with Amazon, you probably know what you need to do, right? You've probably seen a bunch of growth recently, so you know what you need to do to make that the norm or even keep it growing from there, and such as well. Okay. And then, so when does it switch over from, okay, I like flipping stuff to now I do wholesale. Now I start hiring people. Like where do we get in with that? Cause that's obviously a lot of our listeners are doing RA, they're doing OA. They want to do wholesale, but they don't quite know how to get into it.
So 2016, my brother was still started working for me. He did a lot of sourcing for us. 2016, we actually got this tip from somebody that, hey, the store does this wholesale program. Like the website's awful, but you get a person to talk to. Like, okay. So we submit a form and get a call a couple days later, and we start buying from them. They start delivering to us on semi trucks, and we start selling online. We're, saved us from having to go to 15 different stores to get the same stuff we wanted. We started doing that. Then we realized, well, if we're just doing it with these guys, why can't we go directly to the company and got to figure out if it makes sense? We don't need $300,000 worth of toilet paper or laundry detergent, but what can we make work? So we started figuring that out as we went. And I would say 17 was really more of the inflection point as far as volume and picking up a lot more direct wholesale relationships, as well as picking up some employees. I think by the end of 2017, we had about 4 people full-time on staff. And that number was relatively similar in 2018, and then really starting to pick up as we went into 19.
Sure. And then what was it in terms of, was it 2019? Okay. Overall, just the e-commerce space grew a ton, or I got this really, really good wholesale account, or what was the big kind of momentum point with that?
The biggest kind of moment. So 2018, I think this is like November-ish. We found out from that store we were buying from that we were buying quite a bit of product, probably 70 or 80% of our business. They're like, hey, 90-day notice, we're not doing this anymore. Okay, that's hard. So we start contacting as many companies as we can. I think right around Christmas time, actually. I said, I'm like, hey, here's a list of all these companies, here's a list of like 15 of them. I can't get a hold of anybody on the phone. We've tried emailing them. We've tried, reaching out to them on their contact form on their website. Like, can you do something to get us in contact with these people? One of the internal operations people from that company sends me a list of all these names, telephone numbers, and email addresses about 2 hours later. Which is really cool because we're like, hey, you know who this is? They're like, oh yeah. I'm like, yeah, we're kind of like that. It's not untrue. We buy stuff, we sell it.
Sure. Okay. And then, so what does the current organization structure look like? Because we know you'd said you're in the warehouse, you're in the conference room right now. Okay. So
Yeah, so I'm in the office 5-ish days a week, especially during Q4. I have my brother who still runs my operations. I have another analyst who does a lot of like accounting, so APAR, pays the bills, takes the bills in, helps with payroll. He does some analytics for Amazon. He does a little bit of everything. And then below my brother who's in operations, we have somebody that's in charge of the day-to-day people management. So making sure we have enough people to get different tasks done, splitting people into different groups. For prepping something that only takes 3 people, we can have 3 or 4 lines running. So that way we get more of it done faster. Really, we're very flat. We don't have a whole lot of people in management. It's right now I have a lot of people that are doing prep. In-house today, we have 12 people that are on payroll and about 6 people that are temp workers through a company called InstaWork. So you literally post shifts, like if you've ever done DoorDash before and signed up where you have to do like a 3-hour shift or whatever, you post onto an app, say, hey, I need 4 people to do general warehouse work during between 12 to 4. And the people look on their phone, see the notification, and they pick up shifts.
Yeah,
Some
I've
people
heard,
do it
Never
once,
heard
some
about
people
that.
do it tons.
yeah. The big thing, right? So for everyone listening, right? Obviously, you guys got the FBM wars that you're scaling up here. You know, as it's late November, right? That in getting into December, it's only going to get worse, right? So if the little brother, little cousin, kid next door can't help you out, this is a great option, right? I've
Oh,
heard.
yeah.
Also, definitely Snapchat stories, right? For all my young people listening. Right? Hey, I need some help fulfilling these orders, right? Who's around? 15
Yeah,
bucks an hour,
and
whatever.
cash always pays, you're like, hey, I'll give you like 20 bucks an hour to come over and pack orders for a couple hours, and like, hey, whatever, like if it works, it works. There's a bunch of people that are looking for a little bit extra money right now.
Especially the people that are listening in college, right? Every college student wants an extra $100 to go out with, to go to the bars, to go whatever, right?
Yep.
I mean, it should be so easy in college to find people to work.
Yeah. Okay. So
So
another thing I'm curious about from the early
yeah,
days too is, so we always talk about, right? The Amazon community, right? Amazon Twitter. I know you're in there. I follow you. I saw that was a beautiful. I think it was like, what was that? 11,600 open orders you posted the other
I think I was looking at this before we just started recording this, right? So we're at Cyber Monday. We're at like 2 o'clock in the afternoon, right? We're at 13,953
Oh,
open
exactly.
orders.
Yeah. So today's
Yeah.
going to be over 25 then. Yeah.
Oh
So
yeah.
what was it
Oh yeah.
like in terms of the early days? So obviously you found some stuff on Reddit, but was there an Amazon community at large? I assume it was probably on Facebook groups. If so, what?
So back then, Facebook was much more active in the for Amazon sellers. I think it was like FBA. Yeah, it was FBA Master was like the big group. There was 20 or 30,000 people in it. There's a couple other groups. A lot of them have come and gone. Chris actually ran one with Ryan Grant for a while called 5-Star Seller Group is what I remember. Yeah, that's the name of it. But that group's come and gone. Now it's definitely moved a lot more. There's some people on Instagram, but a lot of people on Twitter. There's tons of people on
Yeah, because
Twitter.
I feel like Twitter's blown up in the past like couple of years for sure. Instagram was king for probably like 18 to 20-ish, 21. But the past couple of years, Twitter has just caught fire.
It's so full of people. And I mean, the crazy thing is I go on Twitter a lot just to see what's going on, sort of stay connected to different people. There's people, it seems like there's new people joining every day that are just starting to sell. And I'm like, it's awesome. But I remember thinking back to some of those Facebook groups, and I'm like, man, I wonder what some of those people are doing now because they're
yeah,
not around anymore.
Exactly. And it's tough because you just got to build that initial momentum. You got to stick with it long enough to see it work. Right. And so many people don't, even committing to a year, because you were doing it for a couple of years before you were full time, even successfully, right? Successfully for a couple of years.
I mean, that's the
It takes
big
a
thing.
long
A
time.
lot of people see, oh, well, I sold $100,000 in November. I mean, that's awesome. That's a good thing. Don't get me wrong. But what a lot of people immediately think is, I'm going to go buy a $20,000 car, watch,
Yeah.
whatever you want to call it.
They low
And it's
key
like, well, if
fire.
you take all your money, all your profit out of your business, you're not going to have anything there to grow. That's the problem.
It's the Q4 euphoria that bites people come January, February. Let's dig into a little bit more tactically, like outreach, right? I think that's one of the big pieces that a lot of people get caught on in terms of who to reach out to, what to say, how to position yourself, what companies should they be looking for, that sort of thing. So give us some perspective into like how your outreach has progressed over the years, and ultimately in 2023, 2024 for that new wholesale seller that's listening to this, what should their focus be?
Yeah. So there's like a couple of ways you can look at this. Probably the first one is everybody wants to go after, like Nike, I want a wholesale account with Nike, or I want a wholesale account with Kraft Foods, or somebody that's just absolutely massive. While it's not a bad goal to have, it's just a very difficult thing to do these days. Number one, a lot of those companies have a ton of barriers to entry. Not that that's a bad thing. It just means you're gonna have to jump through a lot more hoops and get told no a lot more times before you might get somewhere. Sometimes what you have to do is come at things with a little bit of a different strategy and say, what can I develop that is more of an emerging brand, or something I see that's coming up and rocketing, because if you've done RA or OA long enough, you know how to read keep it charts, you know how to see where people are coming from on new products and what demand is. When you can reach out to those companies that like you look at the listing and people are still buying this, and it just looks like somebody took a picture of the stupid product with an iPhone 4. Those are the companies where if you can come up to them and say, hey, like, this is what I want to do, and this is what I think we can do if we actually go through and help you out, you're gonna have way more success. It's not to say that someday you can't go out to those craft foods or those. Nike's gonna be hard. They're not gonna lie about that. You can't go out to these larger companies and get there. It's just not gonna be your first couple of accounts. Not unless you get incredibly lucky, in which case, more power to you guys. That's awesome.
Yeah, and then
And
where do you see in terms of starting point, right? For that first wholesale account. So I'm currently doing, let's call it online arbitrage. I'm making 8 to 15K a month profit, right? I want to start doing 20. I want to start doing 25. I can get warehouse space locally. Like, where do you actually start in terms of getting those relationships? Is it trade shows?
What I would do is start going and talk to some people local to you. Like if you're in New Jersey or you're in Orlando or you're in SoCal, go talk to some people that are local to you that are distributors of different things. If you want to sell food, go to a food distributor. If you want to sell clothing, go to a clothing distributor. Like you can literally go on Google and type in clothing distributor Los Angeles, and you'll find a list of a bunch of different people to call. And some of them might be as 5 miles away from you. Some people might be, 20, 30 minutes, but go talk to these people and learn how they sell in retail and then see, hey, like, oh, I see you're selling, this, I don't know, literally pick anything, this stapler, it's selling on Amazon. Like, what do you want for a case of staplers? Oh, you want $30 for 25 staplers, and the stapler is going for $15. It's selling 600 a month. Hell, I mean, one of the first wholesale relationships, this is such a weird story, but we got with a company I was in my grandma's basement. She had this family friend staying with her, right? It's cleaning product. It's like the only cleaning product I sell still. This guy was selling it at local farmers markets. And I'm like, it sells on Amazon. It sells for like $48 a gallon. I'm like, Tom, how much are you paying for this? Like when you're buying it from the company? He's like, I don't know, like 12, 13. I'm like, interesting. And I'm seeing it's selling 800 a month. And I'm thinking to myself, well, hell, I mean, if there's only one person up there selling it now, that's how we ended up getting probably one of our first 3 wholesale accounts. We just said, hey, like you're selling to this guy, Tom. Like, oh yeah, we know who Tom is. Oh yeah, he's staying at my grandma's house, like renting a room for her. Oh, okay.
And there we go. Okay. Another thing I'm curious about, I always like asking Corey Ganem, I know you know him.
Yeah.
When we talk, is how much of your business consists of, doing new outreach for new suppliers versus just taking advantage and really trying to maximize those current wholesale relationships that you have currently?
I would say right now it's about 70-30. One of the things we're probably going to do next year is have somebody in more of a business development, that sort of role to onboard new people. One of the relationships I have that's been a really long-term relationship is with a food broker, sort of like an independent salesperson that represents a bunch of different companies, right? He gets pitched new things all the time by people. He sort of acts as like a filter to me. Like, oh, well, this person wants to sell guacamole on Amazon. Guacamole's not shelf stable. That ain't going to work. Oh, this person wants to sell, popcorn that lasts 9 months. Okay. Like is the product marketed well enough that we think we could do something with it online? That's the sort of relationship you can build over time. But frankly, we're looking for new stuff all the time. Probably one of the best things I did is I bought another seller's account earlier this year. We're not actually using their selling account. We just bought it for relationships. It had 3 different suppliers. One of the suppliers, we bought $30,000 of pasta and sold all of it within like 5 weeks for Halloween.
Interesting.
Yeah.
And in terms of really growing this business, scaling this business, specifically in terms of wholesale, a lot of headaches are going to be around capital, right? Acquiring capital, building relationships, not being able to necessarily afford the $50,000 MOQ that you are really, really confident in. What are some options that new wholesale sellers have with that regard?
So there's a couple things you can look at. If you really think the product will do well, one of the things some companies will let you do is split the MOQ over multiple POs. So you say, okay, I can bite off $5,000 at a time. and I'll do this once a week or once every other week. And that way you have some capital coming back in from Amazon to fund and sort of scale up those POs. That also lets a lot of those companies, especially if they're manufacturers, not so much distributors, but manufacturers, get what's called PO financing. So they can get, because it costs them money to make stuff too. They have to pay their bills. Another way you can do is do split buys with other sellers. We still do that today. Where,
Really?
hey,
Really? That's
minute,
awesome.
yeah, there's one company we deal with where they they don't want to register for sales tax in multiple states, so that's the only reason we do split buys. Stupidest reason ever, but if it works, it works.
Sure. Okay. Another thing I'm curious, especially for sellers who have been in the game a while, I think this is really, really applicable because naturally, pretty much everyone's business is young, relatively speaking, right? Even
Right.
10 years is a relatively short amount of time in the grand scale
Mhm.
across his life. And such. So what are some of the traits, tendencies of people you see who really make it over the long term, let's say sustain 5+ years and such? Because that's what basically everyone, I hope if they're listening to this, is looking to do. So I'm curious your insights from someone who's actually weathered the storms and such.
So one of the things that I've thought of, when you said that, you have to be willing to constantly solve problems. I mean, Amazon suppresses your buy box. The vendor won't sell to you anymore. The vendor says they don't want to take any new Amazon sellers. Really, what this comes down to, if you've been in this game for 3, 5+ years, is you're always figuring out how to solve somebody's no and turn it into a yes. Sometimes it's as simple as explaining it again to them in different words. Sometimes that comes down to using. I one time got 90-day credit terms. I was the only client to ever get that because I used the company's tagline in an email. It just showed that I knew something about them. I paid attention, but it got me 90-day credit terms on some purchase orders, and that let me buy more product from them. So you never know. You have to sort of almost eke out what's important to somebody in order to solve their problem. The other thing that's super, super important is keeping an eye on your finances. As you guys both alluded to a little bit earlier, I do work with Chris Potter. I'm the other minority owner of Tall Oak Advisors. We handle people's bookkeeping. We also handle taxes. There'll be a link in here for a discount code. It's $250 off your tax return as long as you sign up. I think the deadline date's sometime in December. I don't have it off my top of my head, but we can help you guys look at your financials and understand them. That's what I actually did before I was on Amazon. I worked for a tax and accounting company. We also own some brick and mortar tax offices that do taxes for 7,000 or 8,000 people a year. So it's a fun business.
For everyone listening, that's a huge perk that we're giving you guys. $250 off your tax returns this year.
Yeah.
And we don't get anything out of that, by the way, too. We're not paid to do this. We met Chris about a year ago. His first podcast was awesome. We had him on again. You guys should go listen to those episodes as well. Ryan's partner, Chris Potter, and then follow them both on Twitter. As well too. One thing I'm curious about in terms of having deep roots established in the wholesale industry, right? Are you doing brand management exclusives? We're the only seller on the listing, or is it a little bit more traditional? I see there's 7 people on this. The price is stable, or is it a mix of both?
It's a mix of both. What we were able to do with, there's 2 very large companies we work with. One, we are one of 2 sellers. We're the larger of the 2, that are the authorized sellers. So to give you guys that are either newer to wholesale or don't know this, Amazon gives you a lot of tools within their brand registry program. A lot of things that wholesale sellers or people have been doing RA and OA know, or like the IP complaint thing. It's not really what I'm interested in. I'm more interested in Amazon now shows you brand share. They allow you to do special brand marketing things. They allow you to send emails within certain criteria. They allow you to do a lot when you have brand access, and having that from 2 different very large brands also shows you things you can do as you start to move more into wholesale. And if you ever want to do private label, it gives you some other cool ideas. That's super massive. Probably we're 65 to 70% still reselling other people's products and non-exclusive. 30% of it ish is exclusive stuff right now.
So before we transition to some of that private label stuff, which we're super excited to hear about, how I think there's also a misconception in terms of like the volume of success that's needed with wholesale, right? Of course, the volume of outreach is understood, right? Everyone knows that they're going to have to put in hundreds and hundreds of outreaches. But in terms of how many times you have to actually get it right, what does that look like, right? Are you buying from tens, hundreds, single digits of accounts?
So one of the things we were doing is making an updated vendor list last week. Um, right now, I would say we probably have about 50 active vendors. We have had probably 150 in the last 5 years. So there's vendor churn. There's going to be people that decide to go exclusive with somebody else. There's going to be people that decide to do it themselves. There's going to be people where the product's just not profitable. It's going to happen. So it's also why you constantly, even in the back of your head, need to be looking for more new accounts, more people, different things.
Sure. And then, so how'd you actually meet Chris? And can you talk about what that relationship was like over the years? Whether it was like, okay, like you guys know each other for years before you met in person. Like, to talk to us about that, because it's probably a pretty similar story to Garrett and I.
So I think I met Chris for the first time at one of Jim Cockram's events, which that's an experience. But he and I had known each other since about 2014, 2015. I think the first time I met him was I want to say it was 2016 or early 2017. We have been talking online for a long time. I've met hundreds of sellers in person. It's always been a fun experience. We used to hold giant parties for ASD out in Vegas. He and I have been really close and sort of partnered together, not only on 5 Star, but also on Tall Oak. We started doing that in 2020, and then we expanded to Tall Oak Advisors, which handles a lot of the e-com stuff in 2021. Seeing this as just the big need. There's a ton of great salespeople in the Amazon space. There's a ton of really good marketing and really smart people in that space. There's not a lot of finance or accounting experience. And really, you could be the best salesperson ever, but if you're not selling something profitably, you're not going to be able to stay in this business very long.
Yeah, for sure. And bookkeeping, talk about the importance of bookkeeping, because I think that's right. There's a lot of Amazon sellers, but I don't think there's as many Amazon businesses, right? And with a business, there's a lot of extra things that are included, right? Employees, outsourcing, bookkeeping, really knowing your numbers. So talk a little bit about like the importance of bookkeeping, how to stay organized. For our perspective, maybe the first step of approaching that bookkeeping for the viewers that are maybe in their first or second couple months.
So the biggest thing is Inventory Lab or Seller Board or other software like that are wonderful tools. They are not your books of your company. They have numbers. They tell you great information, good things to know. They're not QuickBooks. They're not Xero. They're not an actual bookkeeping software. Probably it's hard to do your first couple of months. I'm not gonna tell you should. And frankly, a lot of the new people, the first 60, 90 days that come to us, it's kind of almost too soon. Just because if you only have $10,000 in sales, you'd be best served in like churning that cash and making more money and making more sales. The people that come to us after 2 years and $800,000 that have never done bookkeeping before, it's probably a little too late. You really should also try. I know it happens a lot in RA. I know it happens in OA. As much as you can, segregate your spending. So don't use your personal credit card to spend on your business purchases or vice versa. It makes it really hard to pull things out, especially if you're using a lot of both on one card. The other thing that's super, super important, get a business bank account. It doesn't normally cost very much. You can go to Chase and open one, put like $500 in it. I think it's $10 a month. Or you can go to Wells Fargo or one of the big banks. It doesn't have to be a big bank, but they do generally link a little bit better with QuickBooks than some of the smaller community banks. Just try to do things so that it's separate for your business than your personal. It just makes it really hard when we have to there was somebody that had a bunch of OnlyFans stuff they were expensing.
Mhm.
It's like, I
That's a
don't
good
think IRS is
yeah.
going to like that.
That's a good tweet too, for sure. As well. One thing I'm curious about is what do you think? Chris had a really, really good answer. I remember it was like over a year ago, and I still remember. What's a metric that Amazon sellers should be tracking that most people aren't tracking?
I'd say there's probably two. One, most sellers are looking at their net profit in some other third-party software. Look at it from what it looks like inside of an accounting software if you're big enough. If you're not big enough for the first couple of months, you can kind of put this together in Excel. The other piece I would look at, especially this time of year, look at you can also look this up online, statement of cash flows. What a lot of people do is they start getting a bunch of money from American Express. So laugh at your photo in the background there, or other banks, and then they're not getting it back quick enough to pay those bills. You really, even we can help you with it at Tall Oak. You can do it yourself, rudimentary, to come up with it. If you don't know where your cash position is going to be, you're going to be in for a rude awakening.
Sure.
What was Chris's answer? It was like inventory turnover or
Return
something.
on, well, inventory turn is awesome. And you can get a rough sense of that in Seller Central inventory than inventory
Yep.
plan. Chris's was ROIC, return on invested capital.
Yeah.
Yeah, because he wrote a good thread about it recently too.
Return on time invested is another good metric. It's not necessarily financial, but is your time best spent watching, as we're talking about podcast, is your time best spent during Q4 watching, 3 hours of YouTube videos? Probably not.
Yeah,
It's fun.
Listening to the buy box bandits while
that's true.
filling those
While
FBM
you're
orders.
it actually has been statistically proven to increase FBM buy box share too. A lot of people don't
True.
And you can always listen to YouTube on 1.25x.
Get through it further. Yeah, if only you could source on 1.25x too, or prep on 1.
Right?
As well. That'd be cool. Cool. So just want to kind of walk through just what Tall Oak offers, as well as people can find you on Twitter as we finish up here.
Yeah. So I'm at Ryan Yaple on Twitter. Tall Oak offers both business. We offer bookkeeping, so that way you can actually know where your net profit sits. A lot of people get down to February, March, June of next year, and they're like, "Oh crap, I owe all this money in taxes." One of our goals is to provide you with books so you know where you sit, so you can make some plans around that, and not all of a sudden say, "Oh crap, I have to come up with $10,000, $20,000, $30,000 for the IRS." The other thing we offer is we offer the ability to do your taxes. That's the discount code I'm going to have linked with the guys in the show notes. That will go through and we'll be able to produce a tax return for you. If you don't file your taxes, the IRS is eventually going to come and find you. Sometimes your state will too, depending if you live in California. We can go through and get those prepared for you. We have tax professionals sitting in our offices in North Carolina as well as Virginia that they do, like I said, I think last year was like 7,800 tax returns. We do tons and tons of taxes.
Because Chris lives in Virginia or North Carolina, right?
Chris lives in North Carolina. I actually had lunch with him. I went to a wedding down in North Carolina last month, and I live up in Michigan, but we have staff for that business. Some of them, especially on the bookkeeping side, some of them live in the Philippines. There's one lady living in Dubai for a while.
Good. Cool. Sweet. All right. Well, thanks a lot for coming on. We appreciate all the game on wholesale, accounting, etc. So it's Ryan Yaple on Twitter.
Yep.
Cool. So make sure you follow the man on there. Thanks for coming on, and then thanks everyone for listening as well.
Awesome. Thanks, guys.